There's no mercy in this world, just hunger-thirsty persons in different versions, each new update, that shit worsens. Why? Pull back the curtain and you'll see the different vermin. We all have different burdens that all seem to cause disturbance. Yo, so do me a favor, don't treat me like a neighbor. Don't need the different flavors of your problems just to savor. I've got my own issues, I need a comb to get through. Don't need to groan with you, just go get your own tissue.
Hello, welcome back to Church Folks. I'm Drew.
And I'm James.
All right, and we're coming back with episode 4. And this episode is about the purpose of correction in the body of Christ. And so that's what we're going to talk about. You know, is correction meant to be public? Is it meant to restore? Is it meant to punish? What does it mean when it comes to being corrected? And then we're going to ask, you know, just when does correction become condemnation? You know, a lot of things you see on social media Sunday after Sunday where people are getting up in front of the church and they're rebuking the member, the pastor's rebuking on somebody on staff, or the musicians, or the first lady's up there talking about someone. So like we kind of want to just explore this topic and see, you know, what's right and what the word has to say around it as well. James?
Yeah, I think that's great. I am so excited. I can't wait for us to just dialogue and talk about this, because this is a very important thing, especially in the world we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, why does correction make us so uncomfortable?
I think, Andrew, it makes us, I think pride gets in the way. I think that we don't feel that certain people should correct us. You know, it's like, I got one mom, I got one dad. Those are the only people that can correct me. And I think sometimes our pride gets in the way, and then we take it personal, because we think the correction is a personal attack. But really the correction is to kind of check ourselves to be like, you know what, but it also holds accountability as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think, I mean, it's, to your point, pride is a huge part of it, right? And so I think it's the way it's done too that makes the difference. Yeah. So I mean, some things you have to rebuke publicly, but I think the things that we've been seeing is just a bunch of nonsense to me, to where I feel like it should be done in the, you know, in the back office, in the pastor's office, or, you know, behind the scenes, not something that we as the church should be able to see. And it should, if the correction happens, there should be where you come out to the church in front, to where we don't know that something happened behind the scenes, you know?
Right. And also, to your point, I think back then, Andrew, when the correction took place, a lot of the people in the church, it was a sense of maturity. Now we have a lot of babes in Christ. We have those who don't understand it. So if I'm going to put somebody in front of the church now, it's 2026. It's like, I'm you know what I'm saying? And what happens is you run people away, because what I believe you and I, you know, we're church kids. We were kind of taught it, but it's different now, because it's like, okay, I'm trying to get my life together, but then all of a sudden somebody's correcting somebody. I'm confused. That's where the confusion comes in. And I like you said, it needs to be, some things need to be behind, it needs to be ironed out. And I also think, Andrew, there needs to be some type of structure, some type of policy. It just can't be one thing. It needs to be, you know what I mean? Because correction is not supposed to make an embarrassment on somebody.
Exactly. It's almost like the church needs its own HR department.
Yeah. Right. Well, no, seriously. No, yeah. True. Yeah. How do you, what does it look like? And also, how do you correct someone while you're in leadership and you need to correct that person that's under you? What does that look like?
Right.
And also, Andrew, this is, I'm going to throw a wrench in it. It's hard to correct somebody when they're familiar with your own behavior.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah. Or they know you personally, right?
Yes. Yes.
Like you are
Yes.
intertwined into their life to where
Yep.
like you know all my pressure points or whatever.
Yep. There you go. So
Yeah.
so as for me, if I'm trying to correct you, you'd be like, well, James, well, wait a minute. I know you do this. I know you do that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you need to correct yourself before you correct me. And I think oftentimes when the person is corrected, they get too familiar. So the correction comes off like, well, you're doing the same thing too. So I'm confused.
Yeah. And you hit on a point earlier when you were talking about, it's kind of how we grew up and what we've seen in the church modeled, in different churches, to where it becomes more of a habit per se.
Oh, like that.
And that it doesn't make that necessarily right, but I think it's just how the pastor or the staff members handle those certain situations, to where you have to be, you have to think, are you doing this as a sign of love, or are you trying to really embarrass someone?
Right. Yeah. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, wait. No, I love it. On that love thing, go for it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because if you're doing it out of love, you're doing it for protection of the other person, not so much protection of you. Of course, you can protect you because it's your brand and your name is on the line, depending on how big or maybe even how small the church is.
Right.
But again, like, are you doing it as a sign of love, or are you just because you want it done a certain way? Right. I think what we've seen in social media is because I want it done in a certain way and I'm the boss. And so I need to take you down a peg to embarrass you, kind of.
Right. And it's like, and it's interesting you said out of love. I was in, when I was away on vacation, I was talking to a young preacher and I said, would your generation take correction? And he said, we would take correction, but you need to explain to us what we did and how can we fix it. I said, wow. And Andrew, I had to like pause for a second. And he says, I want to explain it to me, take it to scripture. And what do I need to do to change that? I said, dang, that's deep. Because listen, I've been corrected. I mean, that's probably before. I didn't understand why I was corrected. It's just what it was. You know what I'm saying? And no explanation and stuff like that. But I also, and it comes from like that maturity. It comes from that spiritual level. Andrew, I think our corrections might be a little bit different because we grew up in church versus somebody who really didn't. You know, your father was a bishop and a pastor. My dad was a deacon. So you know what I'm saying? So I think it really, but I think now like it's with love. And the thing about it is you're not here to humiliate them. You're not here to put their name out. It's basically like, how can I help you? And you're right. This stuff. And here's the thing. Social media is only showing certain stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, they find the clips that are viral worthy to be able to put out there and not show like the full exchange of what happened, so
that is so when I think of a scripture when it comes to correction, it's if your brother, you can put sister, I know what it says, has been taken by a fault, he who is a spiritual restore. That key word is he who is spiritual. Because the thing about it is that if you're trying to correct somebody in being carnal, it's not going to happen. You're supposed to go to that person. And it says with meekness, lest you be that same person. So restoring is like bringing them back. It's called the ministry of reconciliation. And I think what happens is that we try to go to them and we pointing the finger like, well, you know what? You shouldn't do this and this, you know what I'm saying? And then we just walk away. There is no type of correction. But that person has to be able to receive it. And I think that's the key. And it says, go to your brother, go to your sister. And if you cannot, you take somebody with you to be that kind of mediator. And I think what happens is that's where a lot of church stuff and all this stuff comes up. And sometimes, Andrew, and I'm going to ask you a question: should some corrections be public, or should some corrections be private?
Well, I think it depends. And in my gut, I want to say no. It should never be public. It should be something that,
Right.
like, if you think about your job, right?
Yeah.
And I just learned this from just being a leader, you know, in the corporate world.
Yeah.
You always want to do that and talk to that individual and just understand what's going on, because usually there's something going on,
Right.
an underlying issue. And if you approach a situation that way, you can uncover really what it is and get to the root of it. And then you can have that dialogue and conversation about, okay, here's what you need to do to move forward and fix the situation. But if I'm coming at you very accusatory,
Yep.
no one's going to be open to that type of feedback. You know, your defense mechanism automatically goes up, you know, with that type of approach. Also, from a leadership perspective, you mentioned something earlier, and I was going to say this. I've learned that you have to manage based on generational,
That's good.
where people are, because you
That's
can't
good. Yep.
coach or talk to someone that's a millennial the same way you would talk to a Gen Xer or a baby boomer, you know?
Yeah.
So you have to approach them differently.
Yes.
And I mean, maybe that rebuke or you come in as a accusatory may work for someone of an older age, but it's definitely not going to work for someone that's younger. So you have to alter your approach based on that person, based on their age group, you know, based on what you know.
And it's interesting you said that, because I you know, I go on social media, I do look at different posts, and I see this backlash. And this is so interesting. When we grew up, we didn't have social media. So, you know, well, we have MySpace, whatever that, anyway. Well, I'm showing my age. But it's interesting because I was sitting there watching some dialogue with a millennial preacher and these different, you know, and they're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I was like, okay, well, first and foremost, the way you're going, you're not going to try to correct them, because you're going like this. And like you said, you got to know the generation, you got to know the timing, and you also got to know how to do it. Because if you're going back and forth, it's basically how you correcting somebody. That's that's opinion. But now, me personally, a couple of individuals I'm going to talk, because they are this next generation. I'm going to be like approaching like, hey, you know what? You got great dialogue. You do, but you really don't have to air it, you know. And like I said, it has to be that, and it should be out of love. It's not to try to degrade you. But my question is, like you said, where you at? What point are you trying to prove? Are you trying to prove that you know, you want them to think that you're intelligent? You feel what I'm saying? So like you said, I love what you said. You got to know the generation, and you have to understand how to approach them. And it is the approach. Yeah. I mean, it's so much. I mean, humility, grace, relationship, the timing. And also, man, you got to pray about it.
Right. Absolutely.
You just can't say, oh, wake up, I'm going to correct you.
I also think too, and I hate to say this, and I love my people. I love us.
I love my people too.
But sometimes we can get on a power trip when we get into a situation when we get elevated, right? And so we want to show the other person that, hey, I'm the one that's in control, right? And so I think that comes into play as well when it comes to, you know, people trying to reprimand someone.
Yeah, and it does, and that part, and we have to be careful about that, because what's happening is we are losing people. We're losing this generation, and it's all about love. And the thing is, this next generation is the why. It was so interesting. I was, you know how we grew up. You know, we got corrected by saying why. No, you don't ask that. Like, why is this? It just, you know, our parents said that's just how it is. And I never forget when my son, when I was out on vacation, and my friend, my son is very inquisitive. And he said, you might need to be careful. He said, the reason why he's asking why, it's not of disrespect. He's trying to understand. Andrew, different generation. Now for us,
right, absolutely.
That was
Yeah.
a backlash. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
like,
Well, it is what
it
it
was
is.
more of a sign of respect. Yeah,
Right. You know,
exactly.
but we really were
Right.
trying to say, like, okay, so why I can't do this, or why I got to take my shoes off when I go in a house, why I got to wear my church clothes to sit on the living room. I mean, just it's a
Yeah.
yeah. And they're going to ask those questions.
So
Okay, why
then,
are you correcting me? Yeah.
exactly. So then what does a healthy biblical correction look like? You know,
I think a help.
attention when it came to correction.
I believe it was out of
No, go ahead.
love. I think about the story of the woman who was caught in the very act of adultery. The Bible said that she was caught in the act, okay? But there was people there. My biggest thing is, why were you there while she was doing the act? So when they went there, and then when she asked who your accusers are, and he began to write all there. Now, we don't know what he was writing. I truly believe that correction was to let them know, okay, I'm correcting her out of love, but yet you're trying to correct her due to your poor, bad judgment, because truth of the matter is, why were you there? So you saw what she was doing. And I'm just going to throw this out. I know it's not in there. You probably did it yourself. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So then the question is, he said, where are your accusers? They're nowhere to be found. And he wanted to let her know, you know what I'm saying? You got your heart. His way of correction was out of love. It wasn't a sign of humility. I mean, not humility. It wasn't a sign of embarrassment. It wasn't a sign of, I'm trying to out you. I want to let you know that you did something wrong, but I'm going to correct you out of love.
Yeah.
And I believe that when we start correcting out of love, and he was making an example, because the ones that are trying to correct you, they're the ones that got an issue as well. So how can, like we said, your behavior, how can they correct you when they know, you know what I'm saying? It's an oxymoron. But the thing is, and I truly believe that's where Jesus was when he was trying to correct. It was out of love.
Have you experienced correction?
I have.
Unhealthy correction, I should say.
I can't say it was unhealthy correction. I will say this. I did something that I thought that was not good, because my reputation and all that. And I went before my leader, and I wanted to sit down. And the answer that I got was, well, if you sit yourself down, then we all have to sit down. And I was like, well, I messed up. You know what I'm saying? I'm coming to you because I needed to be corrected. And Andrew, I really thought it was, I set myself, why by sitting myself down?
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? And I didn't understand.
Well, I guess I'm just going to pull from examples that I've seen based on that situation, based on, what we're talking about, because there's been, there's pastors that have, when I'm talking about like very famous pastors that have come out and they've admitted that they've committed adultery or did something else, right? Financial things within the church. So they'll come forward with whatever their sin is.
Right.
And then they'll come out and say, well, I'm going to go, I don't want to say a sabbatical, but, take some time and pray about it and kind of learn from God. So I think that in a way, that's a good thing to do. But I think what sometimes I feel is missing from that is kind of like you go into a mentor I think everyone should have in leadership inside the church or outside the church should have some type of mentor, someone
Right.
that can hold you accountable for your actions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And who can mentor you through whatever it is that you may be going through, that can
Right.
give you that correction. And I think without that, that's where it becomes a problem. If you don't have someone else that you can go to kind of walk you through how to navigate out of, what you've gotten yourself into, then that's where it becomes a problem, because now you're being led by your own self and not being led by a spirit, so
Yeah.
I think
And
that's where it can be problematic.
yeah. And like you said, with the mentor, that I think it can be a little bit unhealthy because, like I said, I'm going to my mentor, I'm going to my peer. I went to you, and this is this, and I don't really understand. You know what I'm saying? Not to say that I had to go publicly for what I did, but I feel what you're
Right.
saying. And also now I showed up every Sunday. I sat down and all of that. I did it with humility. I didn't have to tell it. You know what I'm saying? But
Right.
it was a different thing. So now, and it was interesting through that. Interesting. I actually helped other people went through the same thing that I went through because of the way I went through. But yeah, I truly believe that too. And I think, yeah, when the leaders and stuff go and they basically say what they did, that is a sign of humility. That is a sign of I messed up. And that is a sign of I want you to pray for me. And I'm not going to mention his name. You probably know. I mean, you live in the city. That was a hint anyway. I like him. But anyway, I mean, what he did, and I mean, you're talking about went before and left. You know what I'm saying? And now he's back. You know what I mean? That's he didn't have to, but that is where, like, listen, this is where I'm at. This is where my heart is, and I'm just showing you. But that also helps the body. Like, wow, they are human. Wow. So for them to be transparent, keyword transparent, and say, this is what I've done, it makes them look back at me like, well, wait a minute. Okay. I get it, and it's not saying that they're subject to anything, but yeah, but it's also on that level. Now, I'm going to throw this now. Have you ever been corrected? And
not in the church aspect, but more like from a professional aspect.
Okay.
I had a situation where I thought I handled it the best way, but the word choice that I used could have gotten myself or even the company in trouble, because this employee had done something and I investigated it, and I kind of said, hey, you're not going to get in trouble, but technically he was going to get in trouble because what he did was not wrong. So from that aspect, but it was, again, how they went about correcting me. I don't think it was in the right way. It wasn't public or anything. It was a one-on-one type of thing, but it was the words that they used that I don't think it was best effective for me to learn from. I think it could have been handled in a different way to where I could have been more receptive to handle or learn from that experience. Of course, I learned from it in hindsight, but during that situation, no. And just kind of going back to what you were saying, I think sometimes too, like we said, what's the purpose that you're trying to rebuke or correct someone? Because I think a lot of times the reason that people are doing it is because they want to set an example to other people so that they don't do the same thing. And I think not everyone needs to know what's under the rug, from a church member perspective. So if you're dealing with this situation over here with, assistant pastor or whoever, the bishop, the deacon, I don't need you to get up in front of church on Sunday and air out that dirty laundry. And I think too many times, and it could be sometimes too, that these churches are so small that, how can I say this? Sometimes the church is small, and that's just, again, part of their nature, like we were talking about. You grew up seeing it that way, but I think it's time to kind of like shift, and just because it's done that way, you have to do better, and handle the situation a little differently. And some things are just not meant to be aired out or put it in the public.
Right. But the greatest example should be Christ. I mean, if you talk about it, was his correction to embarrass you? Was his correction to make you be a ridicule? Was his correction to say, hey, I'm making an example out of you. You should never do this. And there are some things that just doesn't need to be mentioned. There are certain things that, like you said, some things can be behind closed doors. But yeah, and also the different denominations still believe in that. But then we have to be careful, because I'm like, okay, so you mean to tell me that I'm correcting somebody, I'm just going to use it, somebody having a baby out of wedlock. Okay, that happened so many times, and you have mothers that's on the motherboard that have it. But here's the problem. They don't want to be transparent about it. So therefore, they see somebody, that person's about to be corrected. Why don't you go to them and say, you know what? Listen, I don't think this is right, because, hey, one of my child is out of wedlock. You got to be careful, because half of, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people have children that they weren't married when they had their child. So if the truth be told, you need to expose half of us.
Right. Well, and just to say this really quick, because I know we're going to wrap up here in a minute, but a lot of times people say the church is the hospital. So you have a bunch of sick people trying to heal the other sick people. And sometimes we don't know better, depending on the situation. But in based on what you said, of course, Christ is the example of how we should handle those situations. And what is in Scripture is the best way to approach that situation. But I think sometimes we are just hurt people, just hurting other people.
Yeah. That is true. When hurt people hurt other people, they hurt you. And you're right. And it's almost like, I want to get back at you because I want to see you hurt. Or they were like, oh, I remember when I was corrected and I was hurt, And you're right. It is a hospital. We got people with different issues. We're dealing with so much, but we have to be very, very careful, especially when it comes to this. And I think, like you said, the church, they need to have their own HR, because there has to be some policies, there has to be some procedures, there has to be some protocols. You know what I'm saying? How do we address these things? And then you have to be together with people who are like-minded, and also that can take a look at their self in the mirror and realize and recognize they've done some things, or they've done it worse, or they're still dealing with some things. You got to have the ministry of grace and the ministry of reconciliation.
Yep, absolutely. Humility is the key.
Right? Yeah, very, yes.
Well, hopefully everyone got a lot out of this episode. And if you did, please feel free to comment, like, subscribe, and share.
Please.
Yeah, and we look forward to bringing you our next episode. But until then, we'll see you next time.
All right, have a good one. Bye.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.